Hello everyone, Lance Sussman here, and we're ready for week 4 of our class on West European modern Jewish history before the Holocaust. And again, I commend you for a lively discussion. Let's just keep up the good work. One thing that we'll be changing at this point is our first written work is going to be due next week, which is February the 6th. So in addition to the reading assignments and the discussions on the forum, you also have a little bit of work to do at this time. Let me quickly walk you through this. And then I'll give an overview of the content of what we'll be discussing this week. I will also be asking you to literally look at the pictures in our textbook because I believe that pictures are a form of text, and documents, which we'll not do it on this session, but I will add to the forum later. I think there's enough to do in front of us. The written work you have to do at this time is not graded, and its purpose is to help you develop your term paper for the semester. Very importantly, you should be in search of a topic and in search of a book or books which will speak directly to your topic. In the name of efficiency, what I would very much like is if you could find a book that will be central to your paper and read it for the purpose of a book review, then we'll all be that much further down the line. All you need to send me next week, and I think actually could share this with the whole forum, is the title of the book you hope to review and the author or author's name. I'm not asking for a review yet, just to identify the name of the particular book. Be fair to yourselves. I think books in excess of 400 pages are too much. There are many big books in the world of Jewish history, so be reasonable. Some books are, even though they're not written as reference books, really are, and it's something you can come back to time and again. The second thing that I need, and actually it could be all combined onto a single document if you so choose, is a prospectus for your term paper. Usually when there is a prospectus, there's a much larger assignment at the end of the day. But because of the nature of the class and the fact that we really have a mixed population of new graduate students and veteran students, I wanted to provide an opportunity to develop a prospectus, which is critical to writing a master's thesis or a doctoral dissertation, and even for the development of books for publishers. So it's a kind of simulation exercise. I'm not doing it to be sadistic or anything like that, but I do think it's valuable. It also will serve as a kind of feasibility study, so that if you were interested, for example, in writing a term paper on the history of the Holocaust in Bulgaria, and you discovered that all the literature on this topic was in Bulgarian, and you don't read Bulgarian, well, it's just not going to fly. So it is an opportunity to make sure that whatever term paper you pick, it is doable. Now, what should be included in your prospectus? And I would say the average is 2 pages. If it's 1.5, I'll live. and you'll be okay. It's not graded. This is mainly to develop a helping tool for you. Is first and foremost a thesis. What is it that you're trying to prove? Very often, from an intellectual point of view, this is the most challenging part of the whole term paper process. The second aspect would be a description of the scope of the paper. So, for example, I'm going to be writing on the Holocaust in Krakow, Poland, from the time when the Nazis entered in 1939 until Soviet liberation. So it gives you time and a place. Furthermore, you might say I'm going to study how Jewish women coped during this period, and that would give it yet further definition. None of that, of course, is a thesis, but it is scope. Scope tells us how much is going to be on the canvas. An artist's canvas can be a picture of the solar system, and it can be a single apple. And that's what scope is all about, and you need to decide on your scope. Now, none of this is a contract. It is something to help organize early in this semester, and if things change along the way, that is fine. Very often, as research develops, as reading is done, there is a need to change some of the definitions. It's certainly okay. I would just ask that you keep me in the loop and include me. Now, in terms of due dates for written assignments, the book review itself, which we'll talk about more thoroughly next week, is due on the class of April the 20th, and something new, which we really haven't talked about yet, a paper on any aspect of the history we're covering in Western Europe prior to the year 1880. The year 1880, of course, is a kind of tipping point in modern Jewish history. So there's both an essay as well as a book review. Both the essay and the book review are approximately 4 pages. Again, if you go a little shy, live with it, and I guess there's really no such thing as a maximum in this business. If you want to really go to town and do a lot of writing, I'll do my best to read all of it. Okay, so those are some things that we all need to be working on as part of the learning process in many different directions, but also affords me an opportunity to do direct evaluation, which is a necessary part of the educational process. As I've always said, I teach because I want to teach. However, the college does have to pay me to grade because it's my least favorite activity, and I'll do my best to be fair. And again, the goal is to help you understand Jewish history and to refine your skills as a historian. For at least the time being, all of us involved in this enterprise are indeed historians, and it is an endlessly interesting occupation, to say the least. Now, in terms of what we're going to be discussing this week, we are now moving past the Spanish Inquisition, Portuguese Inquisition. We're moving past the expulsion of Jews from Iberia, and at the same time, around 1500, of course, there are other changes that are taking place in the lands where these displaced Iberian Jews are headed. So, by definition, it is a rather complex situation, Many of the changes on the ground, in addition to the forced migration, are revolutionary, or at least radical in nature, all of which is changing society. It is changing economy. It is changing political culture, and in that mix, of course, are Jews who are riding the waves of change, some of which will impact in the short run in a certain way in terms of how Jews are understood in society, and then ultimately in terms of the Jewish experience, deeply imbibed by the Jewish community, so that, for example, the kind of things we read about Jews in the Renaissance in Italy will remain part of the equation of Jewish life, not only in the early modern period, which we're considering today, but right down to the present. And it's a big question from the internal point of view in Jewish history, and that is, to what extent can Jewish identity and Judaism synthesize with the outside culture and still remain Jewish or Judaic in its own right? We know that Judaism combined with the Hellenic world, and that created a certain synthesis, that Judaism combined with the medieval world, and that created a kind of Jewishness and a kind of Judaism. And now we are seeing in the early modern period how Judaism will struggle to define itself vis-a-vis modernity itself. And there are aspects which can be easily accommodated. There are aspects that are resisted. And there are aspects, when accommodated, have a transformative value in Jewish life. In part, by 1500 or so, a big part of what is changing is the idea of wealth. The idea of wealth is changing as feudalism begins to yield to other economic systems. Most importantly in this regard is the increase in value of liquid assets. In the feudal world, land was the basis of wealth and social stature. But in this period, it begins to change, and different ideas begin to emerge as to what constitutes wealth, particularly liquid capital. Now, this transitional period between feudalism, in which status quo is very important, and capitalism is often referred to as mercantilism. On the one hand, mercantilism is good for the Jews because it does create economic opportunity. And on the other side, mercantilism is difficult and challenging for the Jews because it leaves them very vulnerable to attack, whether it's charges about Jewish business activity or compelled distribution of their wealth, because they had, so to speak, the goods. In tracking the story, we need to follow those hundreds of thousands of Jews who leave Spain and settle elsewhere. They are an important population in modern Jewish history because they have already experienced life outside of the Jewish community and know how that works. After expulsion and resettlement in other places where there are Jewish communities intact, they have to find a way to reintegrate. In this sense, and I guess it's possible to say that they're really the first modern Jews from the point of view of being existentially familiar with non-Jewish European culture. And how they reintegrate, of course, is a critical part of the tale. Sometimes the reintegration was tragic. You'll read about Uriel da Costa in Amsterdam and his tragic suicide. Sometimes it's highly successful, and the Sephardim are able to reestablish their own vibrant Jewish communities. And sometimes it's simply dramatic, and depending on where you stand on the spectrum, either a good or a bad outcome. And the most important example of this, of course, is Spinoza in the 17th century in Amsterdam, who was part of a Spanish family, an Iberian family rather, which seeks refuge in Amsterdam, having experienced the outside world, and using the tools of both Western philosophy and Judaic philosophy derived from Maimonides. Spinoza will construct his own philosophical view of the world, and that philosophical view of the world is outside of the parameters of traditional Jewish thought. He makes the move from a pure kind of theism, a belief in God that Judaism holds, and particularly a belief called panentheism, the idea that God is in the world. And he makes the shift to pantheism, in which God and the world are the same thing, which is foreign to Jewish thought, that God is in the world, that the world is of God, but that ultimately God is fully transcendent. Spinoza denies this, and he equates the world and God. As a result of that, there is quite a debate as to whether or not Spinoza was the first modern atheist, or, quote, whether he was the most God-intoxicated man in history, and the jury is out on that question. Spinoza, as a young man, is excommunicated by the rabbis of Holland, and interestingly, he does not convert to Christianity. He also had philosophical objections there, and as a result, lived as a Jew, not part of the Jewish community, who lived entirely according to the dictates of a modern philosophy. In that sense, he is a symbol of modern Jewry. He's even been called the first Israeli, and by that I assume they mean kind of the secular Tel Aviv kind of Israeli who lives in Israel, speaks Hebrew, would agree that he or she is Jewish, but does not believe or practice any form of Judaism. Many of these Iberian Jews make their way to Italy. They make their way to the Ottoman Empire, where they move beyond the scope of this course. They also move to the New World, into the Caribbean and Latin America, where they are part of the transatlantic travel. And they move to Amsterdam, which is an open environment, open and welcoming for the most part, of Jews. So you begin to get this phenomena of what is called port Jews in Europe, principally Amsterdam, and then later England, London, after it is reopened to Jewish settlement in 1655, and a vigorous economic life among Jews on the coast of Latin America and throughout the Caribbean. They're part of this worldwide trade. Their wealth, their function in society is very much determined by their capacity to move goods across the Atlantic Ocean and to create and acquire liquid wealth. So they're very much at the forefront of the mercantilist movement. Now, we also are considering this time the rise of phenomena of court Jews, Hofjuden in German, and these also are Jewish business people who are riding the waves of change between the medieval system and the emerging modern system. The fact of the matter is governments needed ever greater supplies of liquid wealth, particularly gold, as well as certain kinds of goods, the least of which was military provisions. And a class of Jews arose who provided these services to rulers at various levels throughout Central Europe, particularly in the Holy Roman Empire, which later evolves into different states, but mostly Germany on the one hand and Austria on the other. And they play an invaluable economic role. Great hostility is often directed against them. If a given Hofjud worked for a Catholic prince and the prince was deposed by a Protestant mob, well, then the Jewish economic advisor would probably go down with the prince as well. So it was a precarious existence. There was also great opportunity for Jews during this period. Perhaps the most famous of all of the Hofjuden, of the court Jews, was Samuel Oppenheim of Vienna and also of Berlin. Plays a tremendous role in establishing the Jewish community of Berlin, Berlin being the capital of the Hohenzollerns, who are the founders and builders of the Prussian monarchy, around whom years later, in 1871, all of Germany will coalesce and unify. And even though they do well, the court Jews are often subject to fiscal abuse, to violence, and ultimately to expulsion. They served as liaisons between the Jewish community and the local rulers. Very often, you would have a situation, as you did in Vienna in the 17th century under the Habsburg monarchy, wherein Jews were limited in how many could live in Vienna, that they found a post office box in another town and continued to live in Vienna. I had the opportunity once of visiting a town 50 miles south of Vienna called Eisenstadt, which would mean Iron City, which was the home of many elite Jewish families in this early national period who really lived in Vienna but had to maintain some kind of presence in Eisenstadt. Eisenstadt had a big Jewish population. It was also the home of the Esterházys, a noble family who come into play again 2 centuries later with the Dreyfus Affair. And it was the studio of Franz Joseph Haydn, one of the great classical music composers of the period. So you can see how rich even a little town like Esterházy was in terms of Jewish culture. So what we find in this early modern period is a transplanting of Iberian Jews, of them either connecting with or living side by side with established communities, whether they're Sephardi communities or Ashkenazi communities, maintaining their own separate identity, of the development of a significant transatlantic trade among Jewish merchants on both sides of the Atlantic, the entrance of Jews into what will become the United States, the re-entrance of Jews into England, which had expelled its Jews in the year 1290, and the rise of the the rise of the Amsterdam Jewish community. At the same time, in the 16th century, 1517, we have Martin Luther breaking from the Roman Catholic Church and creating his own movement, and his followers ultimately become known as the Protestants, those who are protesting Catholicism. The followers of Luther believed that the Jews would follow them, that they would follow Luther because he presented the real religion, and they were very hopeful about the Jews at the beginning of their Reformation, and then when the Jews did not follow in suit, became extremely hostile and negative. On the positive side, the Reformation does establish a model of multiple communities, unlike Catholic countries where there's essentially one major faith. In the Protestant world, like with ketchup or ice cream, you have 57 flavors, which is going to be reflected in the Jewish world. Today, of course, we have a whole spectrum of different types of Judaism, both non-Orthodox and Orthodox alike. So just a little bit more, and I'll be either writing or talking to you again when it comes to looking at the documents in Mendes Fleur. You can line up the dates with what we're studying on your own. I did want to draw your attention to some of the illustrations in the Hallow book, beginning with after page 218. It is a Gothic picture. You can see how a Jew is dressed in a Gothic style and is wearing a hat which looks something like a pawn piece in a chess game. Jews were required to have special identifying clothing after the Fourth Lateran Council of 1215. In other respects, the Jew in the picture is quite unremarkable in the sense that he looks like other people from that time. Then on the next page, from the late 13th century, a remarkably important picture. This is from what's called the Darmstadt Haggadah, and maybe I'll try and hold it up here for you to see. That way you can identify it in your books. Take a close look at this picture, and it's an illustrated Passover Haggadah, and you will notice how prominent women are in it, and that the physiology of the women is surprisingly German and not Middle Eastern looking. And think about how all this might have come about, and who did the artwork, and what does that tell you about Jewish life. And then on finally the last page of pictures just before 219, at the top on the left is a ketubah, which I'll see if I can show here, which is a Jewish marriage contract, very beautifully illuminated. And next to that is a famous picture of a large synagogue interior in Amsterdam, which, if nothing else, shows how mercantilism had greatly enriched the Jewish community. Again, note the clothing and the degree of acculturation, with the distinction, of course, between acculturation and assimilation. I'll develop a prompt to accompany this brief discussion of our textbook and a later review of some of the documents. In closing, what I'd like you to think about is in what ways were Jews and Judaism modernized after the Spanish Inquisition? And secondly, how did modernity in its earliest phase, begin to change the nature of anti-Semitism itself, because it is a different kind of anti-Semitism that we saw at in the medieval period. At this stage, the results are approximately the same, but as we know, as time goes on, modernity will offer paradigms far worse, indeed hideous, to say the least. So I hope this is a good kickoff for this next part of the course, and I look forward to reading your comments and being challenged by your questions in the day ahead. Take care, be in touch, and please continue to write and challenge one another.